Well, good afternoon, and I certainly want to thank everyone for granting me this opportunity for my interview. I do have some written notes that I thought were important, and I thought as well that it would keep us moving along rather well. First question I'd like to answer is, as Executive Director, how would I add value to shelter staff and supporters? Well, first of all, I think morale is key. I think that's very important, and I believe it also starts at the top. I tend to lead by example, and I think this can produce a trickle-down effect which keeps everybody happy and also adds value at the same time. Leading by example will, of course, allow me to fully understand and implement protocol from start to finish. I get my boots wet, I get my hands dirty, and I think the staff sees that I can appreciate their work. It makes for a much smoother operation entirely. Also, sometimes I notice there can be an air of doom and gloom in a variety of settings. I don't think that that's necessary. I think that we can all work together for the common goal, certainly of quality adoptions. I do plan to model effective behaviors and skill sets, and again, leading by example always. Interestingly enough, I also think that maintaining a spirited attitude towards our animals and to our fellow workers really adds to a pleasantness in the shelter, the community, and certainly I'm sure that our animals will appreciate that as well. Secondly, I like to be inclusive, and what I mean by that is I maintain an open door policy. In my role as Executive Director, I am always empathetic and fair. I do believe a constant stream of communication and a sense of humor certainly are paramount. And I would be active in an ongoing role as liaison between all groups. Also, to be able to provide conflict resolution, I think that's a large part of my position. I certainly would not tolerate any bad or abusive behavior amongst staff to the public, and certainly as to how our animals are being treated. In addition to this, I also like the idea of, in terms of raising value, having Employee of the Month, pizza parties, different kinds of opportunities for our employees to feel that they're certainly very much appreciated. I like to have monthly meetings, I like to have group discussions, and I think that allows time for people, staff, volunteers to air their opinions and feel a sense of inclusion. I also believe that certainly adds value. Finally, I like to get involved in as many media events and public relations as we possibly can. Let's get excited. I think it's time to get the public to provide, or we can provide an awareness to the public to get a campaign going to get more people into our facility. I've often found that people are hesitant. They don't want to see the facilities oftentimes because it's depressing. I say let's get excited about this. Let's bring people in. We can have and maintain an upbeat attitude, and I think that will carry throughout the shelter, and again, the community as well. On and off-site parties with various themes, and also, of course, utilizing all organizations, whether it be the Chamber of Commerce, Boy Scout groups, Girl Scout groups, local businesses and corporations, which certainly can result in many more donations. As many groups as we can tap into would really be one of my big goals in terms of getting the word out for our shelter. Media involvement, certainly a lot of TV engagements, speaking engagements, I think that adds awareness and really produces increased adoptions, and certainly that adds value for all of us. Finally, there is no doubt that our continued success will greatly add value for all. And this will complete the first segment of my answering of your questions, and in a moment we'll be doing question number 2. Thank you. Well, thank you again. I would like to answer question number 2, of course, and question number 2 is regarding our vision, how to eliminate euthanasia of healthy and adoptable animals within 5 years. Well, certainly for me, first on the list would be spay-neuter, almost obvious. Spay-neuter outreach, there should be constant media, educational, and community outreach programs. Certainly spay and neutering is critical, certainly critical to reduce the overpopulation and to reduce abandoned and unwanted animals in society. Public speaking is something that I really enjoy doing, and I think that Public speaking on the advantages of spaying and neutering within the community will allow for further education. For example, maybe to touch base on how spaying and neutering does produce healthier animals, certainly less animal aggression towards other animals and people. Animals become much more adoptable, of course, and everyone really wins. The animals win, the people win, happy pet owners, happy pets. I would like to see a continued and ongoing review of adoption procedures. We should always insist on quality adoptions to ensure the right fit. Also, to be able to add as many programs as would allow for our shelter to have people who adopted animals from us come back in to have maybe puppy classes, dog training classes, a little bit of obedience, and generally how to educate people in an ongoing way as to what it's like to own a dog or a cat and some of the things that you can do to have a quality existence amongst your animals. I think that oftentimes that's why animals are returned. So therefore, let's try to keep that at a level where people are constantly feeling comfortable with what we're telling them, certainly without bombarding them. The next point that I'd like to make is somehow and somewhat controversial for a lot of people, but we'll discuss this here, and that is what is known as limited admissions. Limited admissions, of course, are animal shelters that claim to be, and typically can be, no-kill, non-kill shelters, where they will not be taking animals in except maybe from other shelters or by appointment only. This then allows our animals to maintain a life without having to be euthanized for cage space. To do this, however, I think sometimes capital campaigns are necessary so that perhaps we can figure out ways of gaining more space and land to let our animals, dogs specifically in this case, be cage-free and have a little bit more run of the land, so to speak. Certainly, I would think, and we should think carefully about taking animals in from open admission shelters. It would reduce their population, less euthanasia for them, and perhaps there's a way where we can also save them and adopt them from our shelter. So I think everybody wins under those kinds of situations. And of course, in speaking to a lot of people that are in the business and have been for many, many years of animal sheltering, that can greatly increase public awareness, of course, and donations. And again, donations can mean everything, especially in these times. These are some of my thoughts. I certainly always have and continue to have discussions with those that have been in the field. It produces fresh and different ways to think about eliminating euthanasia of healthy and adoptable animals. That certainly is a very, very important goal, and more shelters are leaning in that direction. And I think that with the right people, the right staff, and the right implementing of rules and regulations, we can do that successfully. Well, I certainly want to thank you for the opportunity to share some of my views with you, and I would also say that this has been my pleasure. Thank you again.